If you are looking for a book to change your perspective on the 9 to 5, I have the book for you guys. Now, my name is Marcus. This is Discover Ignite, where we discover possibilities and ignite change. And today I actually have a book review for you guys. And this particular book I'm reviewing is called The Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. And I'm gonna wanna tell you right now, you're gonna wanna stick through this whole book review because this book was one of those gems that I will guarantee you will thoroughly enjoy. So hold on, stick tight, and let's get this book review started. Now, I must say, before even picking up this book, I had never really read any kind of entrepreneurial book. Most of the books I read were like on business and stuff, yes, but it wasn't really about the mentality, right, of trying to be an entrepreneur and why you would want to be an entrepreneur. And so this book really kind of dives into that, right? And before that point, again, I've read a couple books that were, again, just more amped to how to set up your business essentially for success. And so this book was a real eye-opener, right? And something I really enjoyed because MJ DeMarco is a really unique person, right? And his mentality is probably out there for some people, right? And picking up this book, you're like, it's just one of those get-rich-quick scheme type of things when in fact it's not, right? It's the whole mentality, and to really change your perspective, right? And to realize that there's more than just the regular 9 to 5. And that's essentially what this book talks about, right? Now, I have done a book review on one of MJ DeMarco's books previously on his unscripted book, which was, more on how to essentially become the unscripted kind of person, become an entrepreneur type of thing. Well, this one was just more about the mentality, right? About why he wanted to become an entrepreneur, right? And why you should want to become an entrepreneur and essentially get out of this system, right? Because he talks about the system that everybody is used to, where you and I are all used to, right? In which you go to school, you do your 12 years, you go to college, and then you get that 9 to 5 job, and then you work, right, until at least 65, right? And hopefully you were still young and able to, enjoy your retirement if you have a retirement at that point in your life. And so his whole objective, right, through this whole book was essentially to get to a place where he was a millionaire, right? And he initially got those thoughts, those ideas, right, from someone he had seen at a convenience store that was driving a Lamborghini, right? He was driving his dream car, and he was like, man, that's what I want. How did he afford this money, right? He was expecting some old man to walk out to the car, and some really young guy comes and walks out to the car, and he couldn't help himself, right? He was like, what do you do? And the guy said, I'm an entrepreneur. And he left. And he didn't know what that meant, but he knew that he wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? And so he spent many years struggling like every entrepreneur does in the initial stages, right? And he struggled really bad. He's going from couch to couch and was working at this limousine company and essentially built a website, right? He didn't know how to build any kind of websites or anything. He didn't have any prior programming experience, but he taught himself and he built this thing. He had this idea for his limousine service that he wanted to build, and he built it. And he ended up selling it, I think, for a couple million, and said he would retire at that point. And I guess he went and realized that that million or two, whatever he had, didn't actually last as long as he thought it would. And so he lost a lot of money, but at that point when he had sold it to somebody else, they had actually tanked his old company, right? So he ended up buying back his old company and actually generating many more millions and keeping the company, I think, for like 10 years or so after the fact, and then reselling it again, and to the point to where he's actually comfortable and can retire and can essentially do what he wants to today. And that's what this whole book is about, is just his mentality, right? And escaping that 9 to 5 and not working all the way till you're like 65, 70 years old, and realizing that you're not young anymore at that point, and hopefully you can retire. And especially like my age, a lot of people were more thinking about like pensions and stuff like that, and the pensions hardly exist nowadays, right? Like you have to have multiple streams of income and setting yourself up, right? And just a regular 9 to 5 and a 401k is not going to do that anymore, right? Like you got to have more than just that. There's got to be more than that plan set in stone. And so he really changed my mindset, right? And it was up until that point, after reading that book, that I started really looking at the 9 to 5 different, right? And realizing, what else could I do? What could I build? What could I, create that would allow me to get to that point and where I could retire and essentially do what I wanted to do, right? And so this book really changed my perspective on that. And it really goes to show you that we grow up in the system, right? And we don't think that there's anything else, and that these people, these entrepreneurs, are essentially, like the black sheep of the family, right? Because they don't go along with the herd, right? But yet these people are essentially living their lives the way they want to live on their terms, right? And so he really showed me that perspective. And yes, I had read this book, a couple years ago, but I have read it many times. It's always a good read, right? It's always a good motivational read for any entrepreneur out there, even if you're not an entrepreneur, like I wasn't when I started reading this book, right? And it gave me some good ideas, right? That this is the same kind of thoughts I wanted, right? Nobody wants to work forever. Nobody wants to work, a good majority of your life, right? Because that's essentially what you do, is you work so much to where you're working for almost your whole life, at least a good half of your life, right? And by doing so, by following his essentially mentality, right? By putting in the hard work, right? Like, he didn't know how to build the website. He built all this stuff and created this business that generated him enough money. So as long as he's not, crazy with his money and manages his money, he's able to stay retired and live a good life, right? And so that's essentially what this book has really taught me. And it allowed me to, again, change my perspective on the 9 to 5 and realize that there's more out there and to seek more. And yes, there is a lot of hard work up front, but in the end, right, you can live a much more relaxed lifestyle on the back end, as opposed to, the front end when you're putting in all the work. And a lot of people, they don't want to, do the bare minimum, but then you also find out that you will work a much longer time, right? And so this book really changed my mentality. And it's also why I got that second book, the unscripted book. But this book really set that in stone. And I would highly advise, even if you're not an entrepreneur, to really read this book, because I think there needs to be more light shed on the fact that, you have to really think about that, right? 9 to 5. I know we think about it, but we really don't want to think about it. But this book really gives you that thought, that idea that there is more out there, that you can, get more in a shorter amount of time without having to work 60, 70 years. Maybe you only have to work 10 years, but 10 years, and then you would essentially be able to do whatever it is that you wanted, right? And so that's the concept from this book that I think really resonated with me, and I'm sure would resonate with a lot of people. And one of the reasons why I think everybody should read this book, whether you're an entrepreneur or not. Again, this book was phenomenal. I suggest anybody read this, right? It's not just people that want to be an entrepreneur, but like me, right? Like I didn't really think about being an entrepreneur. I was just like, I only knew the 9 to 5, right? And then reading this book really changed my mindset and helped me realize that I could do more, right? And so I think it's valuable to everybody, not just the person that wants to become an entrepreneur. I think it's somebody that perhaps may want to generate more income on the side and perhaps eventually escape that 9 to 5, right? And so I think this book would help with that, and to help change your perspective, to change your mindset, to be able to do that. Now, as far as any cons of this book, I have no cons of this book, right? I think the biggest con maybe was when I first read it, right? It seemed out there. It really seemed out there. But, once I started doing more research and understanding, what was all entailed, it made a lot of sense, right? Like, you can continue through the system and work forever in a day, or you can put forth the effort up front and then essentially get that early retirement to do whatever you want to do, right? Do things on your terms, do whatever business you want to do on your terms, because you've already have the issue with any kind of problems and stuff taken care of, right? So if you guys are interested in the book, I will leave the book down in the description. And until next time, I will see you guys later.